What's happening, Dub Nation? Welcome back to Warriors News Fan Report, your ultimate destination for all the latest breaking news, insider updates, and comprehensive analysis on our beloved Golden State Warriors. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now because what I'm about to share with you today is critical information that every Warriors fan needs to hear. We're dealing with a developing situation that can significantly impact our season trajectory, and I'm going to walk you through every single detail, every implication, and what this means for our championship aspiration moving forward. This isn't just another injury update or routine game preview. What we're facing right now is a pivotal moment that will test the depth, resilience, and adaptability of this entire organization. Stay with me through the end because by the time we're done here, you're going to have a complete understanding of where we stand and what needs to happen next. Let me start by painting the bigger picture for you, because context is absolutely everything when we're evaluating situations like this. The Golden State Warriors have been navigating one of the most demanding early season schedules in the entire NBA. We're talking about 17 games since the campaign tipped off on October 21st, with multiple back-to-back sets that have tested our roster depth in ways we haven't seen in recent years. This is our fourth back-to-back situation of the season, and for a team that relies heavily on veteran leadership and experience, managing minutes and health becomes absolutely critical during these compressed stretches. The coaching staff has been walking a tightrope, trying to balance winning games with preserving the long-term health of our key players, and that balancing act just became significantly more complicated. The Warriors entered this season with legitimate championship aspiration, and rightfully so. We've got a core that knows how to win, we've added pieces that complement our system perfectly, and the chemistry has been developing nicely through the early part of the schedule. But here's the reality of the modern NBA: depth matters more than ever. And when you start losing key rotation players to injuries or rest protocols, it exposes vulnerabilities that opposing teams will absolutely exploit. We've already been dealing with some roster challenges, some players missing time due to various issues, and now we're facing a situation that could force Steve Kerr and his staff to get incredibly creative with rotations and game plans. Before I get into the specifics of what happened and who's affected, I want you to understand the stakes of tonight's matchup against the Miami Heat. This isn't just another regular season game that we can afford to overlook or treat as a scheduled loss. Miami is a well-coached, physical team that thrives on creating chaos and taking advantage of opponents who aren't at full strength. They've got veterans who know how to win. They've got a defensive identity that can frustrate even the best defenses, and they're playing at home where they're always dangerous. The Kaseya Center is not an easy place to win, especially when you're potentially short-handed and dealing with the fatigue of back-to-back games. This is exactly the kind of trap game that can derail momentum if you're not careful. Now, the Warriors have shown throughout this early season that they can adapt and overcome adversity. We've seen different players step up in different moments. We've seen the coaching staff make adjustments that have kept us competitive, even when things weren't going perfectly. And we've seen the championship DNA of this organization shine through in clutch situations. But there's a limit to how much adversity any team can overcome, especially when you're talking about potentially missing multiple key contributors in the same game. The margin for error becomes razor thin, and every possession, every defensive rotation, every offensive execution becomes magnified in importance. Let me walk you through what's been happening over the past few days, because the timeline here is crucial for understanding the full scope of what we're dealing with. It started on Friday night, when we faced the San Antonio Spurs in what turned out to be a nail-biting 109-108 victory. That was a game where we needed every single point, where execution down the stretch made the difference between winning and losing, and where our veteran leadership showed up when it mattered most. But during that game, something happened that didn't seem like a major issue at the time, but has now become a significant concern. One of our key players went down with what appeared to be a minor injury, the kind of thing that happens multiple times throughout an 80-game season, and usually doesn't amount to much. He stayed in the game, he continued to contribute, and we got the win. Mission accomplished, right? Not quite. Fast forward to Tuesday night, and we're facing the Orlando Magic in another challenging matchup. The Magic are a young, athletic team that's been surprising people this season with their energy and defensive intensity. They're not an easy out for anybody, and we knew going in that we'd need to bring our game to come away with a victory. The game was competitive throughout, back and forth action with multiple lead changes, Exactly the kind of playoff intensity basketball that prepares you for what's coming later in the season. But then, in the first half, disaster struck. The same player who had dealt with that minor issue against San Antonio went down again, this time with what appeared to be a more significant version of the same injury. The training staff immediately attended to him. There were concerned looks on the bench, and you could feel the anxiety rippling through the entire organization. He tried to play through it because that's the kind of competitor he is. That's the warrior mentality that has defined his entire career. But you could see he wasn't moving the same way. Wasn't able to plant and explode like he normally does. Wasn't able to execute at the elite level we've come to expect. The Warriors went on to lose that game 121-113. And while there were multiple factors that contributed to the defeat, losing a key player to injury in the middle of the game absolutely affected our ability to execute the game plan. After the game, when asked about his status moving forward, this player gave a response that was both honest and concerning. He acknowledged the injury, admitted he wasn't sure about his availability for the next game, and said it would depend on how his body responded to treatment, rest, and travel. Now, I want to be very clear about what we're dealing with here before I reveal the specific player and injury. This is not a situation where we're talking about a season-ending injury or something that's going to sideline someone for months. Based on everything I'm hearing and based on the player's own comments, this appears to be a manageable situation that requires careful monitoring and smart decision-making. The concern isn't necessarily about long-term damage. It's about making sure we don't rush someone back too quickly and turn a minor issue into a major problem. We've seen too many times across the league where players try to play through injuries that need rest, only to make things worse and end up missing significant time. The Warriors' medical staff and coaching staff are going to be extremely cautious here, and rightfully so. But here's where it gets more complicated. And this is why tonight's game against Miami presents such a challenge. This injury situation isn't happening in isolation. We're already dealing with multiple roster concerns that are limiting Steve Kerr's options and forcing him to dig deeper into the bench than he'd probably like at this point in the season. Al Horford has been officially ruled out for back-to-back games, which is standard protocol for a veteran of his age and experience. The team is being smart about managing his minutes and making sure he's fresh for the long haul. But it does mean we're without a key veteran presence in the front court. DeAnthony Melton continues his recovery from ACL surgery and isn't close to returning yet, which means we're still missing a rotation guard who was expected to contribute this season. And then there's Draymond Green, whose status is also in question for tonight's game. Now, Draymond isn't dealing with an injury per se, but the team is considering resting him as part of their load management strategy, especially if other key players are unable to go. This is the kind of domino effect that happens when you're dealing with multiple availability questions simultaneously. If player A can't play, then maybe we rest player B to avoid overworking him. If player C is questionable, then player D needs to be ready for extended minutes. It's a complex chess match that coaching staffs have to navigate, and it's even more challenging when you're in the middle of a back-to-back situation with limited practice time to prepare. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. The player whose status is the biggest question mark and whose absence would have the most significant impact on our chances tonight. I'm talking about Stephen Curry, the two-time MVP, the greatest shooter in NBA history, the heart and soul of this Warriors dynasty. Steph is dealing with a right ankle injury that he first sustained against San Antonio on Friday, and then aggravated during Tuesday's loss to Orlando. This is the second time in 4 days that he's had issues with the same ankle, which is obviously concerning given his history with ankle problems earlier in his career. Now, I want to emphasize that this is not a repeat of those serious ankle issues from years ago. The medical technology and treatment protocols are far more advanced now, and Steph's body is in much better condition than it was back then. But anytime we hear about Curry and ankle injuries in the same sentence, it understandably raises alarm bells throughout Dub Nation. After Tuesday's game, Steph was asked about his availability for tonight's matchup against Miami, and his response was cautiously optimistic, but non-committal. He said he doesn't think it's anything crazy, which is encouraging, but he also made it clear that his decision would depend on how the ankle responds to the flight to Miami and how he feels when he wakes up on game day. That's the kind of day-to-day evaluation that teams have to make all the time, weighing the short-term benefit of having your best player on the court against the long-term risk of making an injury worse. Steve Kerr and the medical staff are going to err on the side of caution here, as they should, because protecting Steph's health for the long season and potential playoff run is far more important than any single regular season game. Steph has appeared in 12 of the Warriors' 16 games so far this season, missing some time due to illness and now potentially missing more due to this ankle issue. The good news is that the games he's played, he's been vintage Steph Curry, putting up the kind of numbers and making the kind of plays that remind everyone why he's one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball. But the reality is that at this stage of his career, managing his workload and being smart about when to push and when to rest is crucial for maximizing his effectiveness when it matters most. Nobody wants to see Steph miss games, but we'd much rather have him at 90% for 70 games than risk him being at 60% for the entire season because we pushed him too hard, too early. The Warriors are going to make a game-time decision on Curry's availability, and that decision will be based on multiple factors. How does the ankle look and feel after a night's sleep? How did it respond to the flight and the change in altitude? Can he move laterally with confidence? Can he plant and explode off the ankle without hesitation? These are the questions the medical staff will be evaluating, and they'll make the call that's best for Steph and best for the team's long-term success. If he can't go, or if the risk is too high, then we'll see an adjusted game plan that relies more heavily on our depth and our system to compete against a tough Miami team. Interestingly, the Heat are dealing with their own availability questions, which adds another layer of intrigue to tonight's matchup. Jimmy Butler, Miami's star wing and emotional leader, is also listed as questionable for the game. Unlike Curry, Butler isn't dealing with a specific injury, but he gave an ambivalent response when asked about his readiness to play, saying, "Who knows? We'll see how we feel when we wake up." That's classic Jimmy Butler, keeping everyone guessing and maintaining that edge that makes him such a fierce competitor. But it does mean that both teams could potentially be without their best players, which would completely change the complexion of the game and turn it into more of a depth and system battle than a star power showcase. If both Curry and Butler sit out, tonight's game becomes a fascinating chess match between the well-coached teams, trying to execute their systems without their primary offensive weapons. For the Warriors, that would mean increased responsibility for players like Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, and whoever else steps into expanded roles. It would require crisp ball movement, disciplined defensive rotations, and the kind of team basketball that has defined Golden State's success over the years for Miami. It would mean relying on their defensive identity and their depth to grind out a win against a Warriors team that's potentially short-handed and fatigued from playing the night before. The broader question for the Warriors is how they navigate this challenging stretch of the schedule while keeping everyone healthy and maintaining their position in the Western Conference standings. We're still early in the season, which means there's plenty of time to recover from a loss or two. But you also don't want to dig yourself into a hole that requires a massive winning streak to climb out of. Finding that balance between competing every night and being smart about health management is one of the most difficult challenges facing coaching staffs in today's NBA, especially for teams with championship aspiration and veteran cores. Steve Kerr has been through this before, obviously. He's navigated injury situations, he's managed back-to-back games, he's dealt with the pressure of high expectations and the reality of roster limitations. His experience and his ability to stay calm under pressure will be crucial as the Warriors work through this situation. He'll have a plan for tonight regardless of who's available, and that plan will put players in positions to succeed while also protecting those who need rest or recovery time. That's what great coaches do. They adapt to circumstances without panicking. They trust their systems and their depth, and they keep the big picture in mind even when dealing with short-term challenges. For Warriors fans, tonight's game is going to be a test of our depth, our resilience, and our ability to compete when things aren't perfect. If Curry plays and looks like himself, great, we'll have our best chance to win and continue building momentum. If he sits out or is limited, then we'll see what the rest of the roster is made of. And that's actually valuable information to have as we move deeper into the season. Championship teams need to know they can win without their best player for a game or two. They need role players who can step up when their number is called. And they need a system that's strong enough to overcome individual absences. The game tips off at 7:30 Eastern Time at the Kaseya Center in Miami, and it'll be broadcast locally on NBC Sports Bay Area and FanDuel Sports Network Sun, with streaming available through NBA League Pass for those of you watching from outside the local markets. Regardless of who plays and who doesn't, this is going to be a meaningful game for understanding where we are as a team and what we need to work on moving forward. Every game provides lessons, every challenge provides opportunities to grow, and how we respond to adversity now will shape how we perform. When the stakes are highest later in the season, now I want to hear from you, Dub Nation. How concerned are you about Steph's ankle injury? Do you think the Warriors should rest him tonight even if he feels good enough to play? Or do you trust the medical staff and Steph himself to make the right call? How confident are you in our depth to compete against Miami if we're without multiple key players? And what do you think the Warriors should prioritize right now? Winning every possible game or being cautious with health management even if it costs us a few wins? Drop all your thoughts in the comments below because I genuinely want to know what you're thinking about this situation. This is the kind of critical coverage and analysis you get here on Warriors News Fan Report. We don't just report the news, we break down what it means, we explore the implications, and we keep you informed about every development that affects our team. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We're going to be tracking Steph's status closely and bringing you updates as soon as we have them. Smash that like button, share this video with every Warriors fan you know, and let's support our team through this challenging stretch. Go Dubs, and I'll see you in the next video.